you for coming. Just wanted to give you an update where we're at operationally from a hospital point of view, then address a handful of issues. But first, as everyone knows, we're approximately 18 months or closing in on 18 months post realignment. We're closing in on our first full fiscal year is going to be under our belt as the realigned organization effective March 31st of this year. So definitely it's been a busy and eventful last 18 months, and there's been a lot of positive things happening, and a lot of issues have been raised, and there's a lot of changes that are still coming. And as stated recently by our Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Bob Bell, he stated, here, come on in folks, have a seat. As stated by Dr. Bob Bell, who's our Deputy Minister of Health, he said changes are happening daily in healthcare. And those organizations that do not make changes daily in healthcare are in effect going to be left behind. So today I'm talking about the concept of change and how some of the issues I've heard that we really need to take head on as an organization and get past for us to move forward as an organization so we can benefit the patients that we serve. So dealing with change, needless to say, is difficult at the best of times. It is a struggle. And some of you have expressed general frustration with change that's taking place. And as we make changes, we learn from them, changes. And part of it is just how to better communicate change and where change is coming from and the reasons for change, and just making sure everyone understands the rationale for it. So a lot of the changes that have been made or have been made through our standardization and optimization process, or our SOP process. And I really want to thank all of the individuals that have been involved in that process up to this point, and those that will engage in the process moving forward. It's definitely not easy. Our team members are addressing decade-long issues that have been in the healthcare system in Windsor-Essex. However, they're doing so with the right frame of mind, and the frame of mind is that of the patient. And the patient and what the patient needs and what the patient expects and what the patient wants. And one of the reasons we know that's happening is the fact that the patients are in the room as part of the process. The patients are there, the patients are talking about the changes, talking about what changes they think need to be made or would benefit them. And we're taking that into account. So I can tell you though, from my point of view, when people come up to me and say, you know what, I really don't understand this change, or I really hate this change and I can't believe we're making this change, I say to them, then you got to be part of the process. You can't continue to complain about it if you're not part of it. And the only way you gain the right to complain about a change made by your colleagues and suggested by your colleagues and your peers is to sign up. So I say, talk to your supervisor. Go by the SOP office. People are there 24/7. Say, you know what, I want to be part of a process. How do I get involved? And get involved. So I really don't support people sitting on the sidelines and complaining about changes that are authored by their fellow colleague, because that's not fair. That's not fair to all the individuals who put in endless hours in the process and examine these issues, looking at best practices and looking at, from a patient's perspective, the positive changes. And it's not fair to them and how much work they've put in. Now, are these individuals who are involved in the SOP process, or any change for that matter, are they perfect? No. And they don't claim to be perfect. It won't be perfect. They will have to put it in place. We'll see how it works. They make modifications based upon feedback and go from there. But what we can't have is individuals on the sidelines complaining and not wanting to participate. You want to be able to complain, or you want to be able to provide constructive feedback or criticism, then get involved, get at the table and share it with your colleagues and share your ideas on how things can be better. Because that's the way we're going to make for a better workplace and also better for our patients. Now, I've also discussed an issue that comes up from time to time with our medical advisory committee and the union executives, and the feedback I got from them was I need to address this with everybody here across both campuses with respect to not wanting to accept change because people say, well, this is the way Windsor Regional did it, or the words that this has been nothing but a takeover, I can't believe this is happening. Well, let me tell you this, our patients could care less what we went through. They really could care less. I've talked to hundreds, if not close to 1,000 patients since October 1st, 2013, and some of them have said they've heard it through our lips, from our own lips, saying, oh, this is, I can't do this because this is nothing but a takeover, and I'm not going to implement this. I can't believe this was brought forward. And actually, the patients I've talked to that say this to me, it upsets them that they're hearing this. Because from their point of view, we're focusing on an event that they have zero control over, and they really could care less from their point of view. They're coming into one of our facilities, and they're expecting to be cared for. And they could care less in the general sense who's taking care of them, as long as the care is appropriate and is focused on them. So realignment, takeover, whatever you want to call it, call it. Hotel Dieu and Windsor Regional went out of their way to avoid the words takeover, because we knew it would create a sensitive point for people. But we're at a point now, we're 18 months into this, we got to get past this. If it makes you feel better to use that word, does nothing but a takeover, great. If someone in a meeting with you says, I can't believe this is a takeover, why are we implementing this? I think you say to them, my suggestion would be, great, got that out of the way, now how do we fix the underlying problem? Because that's what we're really trying to do. And who cares how we got here, we're here now, so let's fix it. And let's get past this. Because we can't use that as a reason not to fix the underlying problem. And unfortunately, a little bit, not a lot, but I'm hearing it from time to time now, especially when we start getting into those difficult problems, that's when people are raising this issue. And they're using it kind of as a sword in order to avoid making that last change. They figured if I throw this out on the table, it's going to stop everything. Well, we got to get past that, folks. We really do. And we got to make the change and fix the underlying issue. So unlike in the past, I mean, we had Grace, Hotel Dieu, Met, Western, Riverview. I could rattle them off. We spent decades, pretty much decades. I'm a Met person. I'm a Western person. I'm an IOD person. I'm a Grace person. We don't have time for that anymore. We really don't. And our patients don't have time for it either. So we're past that point. So, and as I stated, the minister said, change is happening daily. And if we get caught up in all that kind of stuff, we won't be able to make the changes that need to be made in order for us to move forward as an organization. So to prove my point, something that happened just this past weekend, and I could rattle off a whole bunch of stuff, but there's one that just happened this past weekend, something great, which shows one of the reasons why this realignment and this whole process worked and what we did worked. We had 3 patients over at Met that needed to have surgery this past weekend, and Met was really busy and couldn't get them done. In the past, they would have got canceled, delayed, they would have probably been brought up as inpatients, and they would have taken up beds, it would have been bad patient care, they would have ended up bumping someone else, and all bad things would have happened. It just would have been a domino. What happened? Staff picked up the phone, said, hey, what's going on at Ouellette? We got 3 patients we need to get done. Do you got time? Ouellette said, yeah, we got time. Have them come over here. We'll get them done today. Patients got transported to Ouellette, got done, went home that day. I ended up getting a letter of a compliment from one of the family members saying, this was fantastic. Thank you very much. My surgery got done. I knew what everyone did, and thank you for making it happen. So that's what we have to do. That's what we have to continue to do. And that's just one story. Like I said, we have many more we can talk about, and there's many more to come in the future. So, I mean, most recently, at our Monday morning huddle, the results with respect to HAIs came out, and this past week we had 7 corporately, which is the lowest we have had since October 1st of 2013, which is fantastic. And just so you know, the trend's going to continue next Monday. They're going to announce it's the same amount again. So 2 weeks doesn't make a pattern, but 2 weeks in a row, that's pretty darn good. And I have to commend the staff for making positive changes that have come up with just with respect to hand washing, I mean, our urinal cleaning and removals, bath in the bag, the bathroom tracker with respect to, semi-private and especially ward rooms with respect to the use of the bathroom, and reducing the infections has been really fantastic. And then, as you know, some of the other things that are happening, both campuses now, patients order basically off the same menu through the same system. It's going very well. The staff have been phenomenal. The kitchen staff with respect to implementing that at both campuses, and the staff on the floors were amazing, very patient with respect to the implementation, because pretty much it was overnight. We had to go from one way of serving patient foods to another way the next day, and it was amazing. A lot of bumps, but I'm telling you, the bumps got sorted out as smoothly as possible, and that took a whole team effort throughout the whole organization to make that smooth. And the compliments continue to come in from patients and families with respect to that. And talk about a process, talk about something that's really standardized, optimized, and based upon best practice. So that's fantastic. So focusing on food for a moment, we will be contracting very shortly here at Ouellette campus for the cafeteria services. The hours will be greatly extended as promised, and also we're going to have, and Ralph's not here, we're going to have a, I have to do this because it's Italian, so Ralph told me I have to, we're going to have a company come in, and the provider, it's going to be called Mangia's Italian Grill. So for those Italians in the room, Mangia is, I guess, eat. And it's going to be operated by a popular Windsor restaurant chain, Armando's. So expect to see Armando's or Mangia's Italian Grill on site within the next couple of months. So they're just we're just kind of working out the details with them right now, but very positive. Again, greatly extended hours here at Ouellette for the cafeteria service. We're still in the process with the coffee changes. Still looking at that on how to do that here at Ouellette. Again, greatly extended hours. In the meantime, and continued, no matter what we do, we're still going to use volunteers, are going to be part of that process. So those that are volunteering are doing great, and we continue to really appreciate that. The reason for any type of delays in moving the cafeteria and the coffee forward is we really needed to get the patient food issues sorted out, because finally part of the patient food service was the next stage, where we went to the same service, but we still had two different softwares operating. So we just, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a week ago, went to the same software. So now we're on the exact same system at both campuses, off of one computer system. So we had to get through that next hurdle. So it was rather complicated. At Ouellette, again, some great things. We're continuing to do the refresh of every floor. And that includes clearly, changing of the windows, just refreshing the floors. And just so you know, about a year ago around this time, a little earlier, I think around November, the windows issue came to a head when I started getting text messages from patients wearing parkas in their beds. That kind of said, we got a window issue, we got to fix. So that's what we've been fixing, because pretty much all the air, either cold or warm, was blowing in through the windows without any stop, and we would have heat blasting like crazy trying to keep patients warm, and then that would cause all sorts of other issues all around the campus. So that's something we did, again, with respect to just the ED. Here at Ouellette, expanding the outside for the same reason. We had a lot of cold air coming into the ED, so that was very, very positive. At Ouellette, we're going to be starting this summer moving 5 to 2. So the outpatient surgery areas, we're fixing up 2, and we're going to be moving 5 there, and then the cath lab's going to move to 5. So we're going to have 2 cath tables up on 5. Some of the amazing things about what's happening with respect to that, and the great thing about moving to a 24/7 2 cath table system is just a recent event I was at, was the Essex Windsor EMS Survivors Day. Just happened last week, I think Friday of last week. And Paul Bradford once again did an amazing job as the MC. And all of the survivors that were highlighted there were, at some point, they touched one of our campuses, some Leamington, but mostly, I'd say 99.9% of them touched one of our campuses. And their stories were truly amazing and truly inspiring. And it really is breathtaking to hear those stories. Just so you know, 4 years ago or 5 years ago when they had the first one, there were 4 stories, we're told, of survivors. Friday there were 60. So that really shows the impact of our EMS, of our first responders, of our hospital healthcare workers, of what you folks do on a daily basis and how you are making people live. And these are individuals who had vital signs absent at some point in their journey, and were basically in effect brought back to us. So some of them were there to share their stories, and it was quite breathtaking. Now, that's amazing, but that's 60 people, and that's a very small segment of what we take care of here at Windsor Regional Hospital. Between the 2 EDs, we have some 130,000 ED visits, 40,000 surgical procedures are taking place on an annual basis. And that's kind of, aside from clearly those 60, that's how we're judged, on how well we're taking care of the vast majority of our patients. And that's what is going to make us an outstanding and exceptional provider. We are the 3rd largest community teaching hospital in the province, the 11th largest hospital in the province of Ontario. So along with that comes a lot of responsibility for us as well, and both locally, nationally, and internationally. So I'll continue, and the great thing about it is the stories that families are sharing are coming in daily, which is fantastic, and I'll share those with you, the ones that they give me consent to do so. Some don't, for their own reasons, which is great. But we definitely share all of them with the staff involved directly as well. Part of that, though, just so you know, and again, this is a very small minority, but the way I address issues, I like to take them head on too, because they're not attributable to anybody, but I hear about them, is sometimes, or when I send these stories out, a little bit of the feedback I got, very small, most of it's beyond positive, is some staff are saying, well, with those stories, they're kind of being critical of us in the past, so really it's critical. And I don't like hearing those stories because, in effect, they're saying, you know, things have changed, so change for the better, and really that means that in the past we were not good. And my answer to that is, you know what, we really got to get past that, because again, this is a whole process of continuous improvement. We're getting better. So no matter, I would hate, well, first of all, I think it's a great thing that we get stories from patients saying, I don't care where they're at, I was here 4 or 5 years ago, I was wherever 4 or 5 years ago, and you guys have gotten better. I would love for them to say 4 or 5 years ago was exceptional. Now it's like crazy exceptional. We're going to get there, all right? But, you know, the fact they're saying, hey, I see you're making changes, you're continually making improvements, that's a good thing. That's that whole continuous improvement thing, and we should embrace that and embrace families and patients who recognize that, because otherwise, if we don't hear that, that kind of means we're at the status quo, and that kind of means we're not changing, as the minister stated, and we have to continually change. So that's a great thing. So again, if you kind of hear that, you got to say to people, hey, embrace it for what it is. It's patients saying some great things. And the fact they might be saying, hey, I was wherever before and it wasn't the greatest, trust me, they recognize that if we're making continuous improvement and addressing issues, they like that. That's what they care about. And that's what they want to see. And they'll be our biggest support mechanism, let alone they're the reason we exist, is to take care of them. So one of the issues, just want to address too, and need your help on this one, is this movement of patients from room to room or from even bed to bed without talking to admitting or clearly housekeeping. So what we have is we have some patients, and the staff are doing it for the right reasons. They want to help the patient. The problem is they're exposing the patient to risk when they do this. So a patient comes into a room, patient wants the window room, so they say, oh, we'll transfer you, you know, it's empty, so we'll transfer you over, we'll move you over. Well, if we don't get clearance from admitting, and admitting's not talking to housekeeping, we don't know if that other space is clean, and therefore we could be exposing this patient to infection. Definitely moving patients from room to room, and it usually happens around, you know, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Some patients move multiple times for whatever reason, and there's no phone calls that are made. Well, I know what the reason is. The reason is to try to make capacity for other patients coming up, say, from the emergency department. But if you don't take the time to make the call and make sure the other rooms are clean, then we're just exposing not only that patient to possible whatever, infection or otherwise, but God knows, once it starts, where we end up, who knows. We'll have some nights, we'll look at the statistics, and there's like 20 moves that take place. So we really got to stop that. We have to call admitting, say to the staff, do not move the patient until you call admitting and get the green light, it's okay. Yes, will it possibly delay something from happening? Possibly. But trust me, as we all know, patient gets an infection, whatever 5 minutes you saved by moving that patient, you just lost it. Number one, you're harming the patient. Number two, that patient's probably going to be here a lot longer because they got to sort out whatever infection they have, let alone the impact it could have on their health. So again, before that happens, we got to call admitting, and I know people are actively addressing that issue as we speak. So before I close, just want to update you on the new hospital and where we're at with that process. The site selection subcommittee met last week, and they met with over 20 properties that they examined. And just so you know the process, individually, all 10 people scored the 20 properties on these 32 criteria themselves. So they did all that on their own. So basically every single one of them scored 700 times, over 700 times, 22 properties, 32 times. They had to score them. And then what they did last week is they got together for 3 days, and they did what's called a consensus score, where they went through all those 700 scores, and they came up with an agreed upon score for all 10 people in the room. So if someone scored it a 4, someone scored it a 6, someone scored it an 8, they had to all agree what that number was going to be, and then they tabulate all of them. So they've done that. The next step is to then create a short list of no greater than 5, and that's what they're going to be meeting over the next week or two to do. And then that short list will go to the next phase of the site selection process. And that phase is to have more due diligence done. They'll do kind of soil samples. Price will come into play at that point on who makes the short list. So the goal is, if we can get that and get a preferred site by June, that's kind of where we're aiming. A lot of it has to do with the snow outside. We can't really do soil samples through 4 feet of snow and through 4 feet of frost in the ground, frozen ground, so we got to wait for stuff to thaw out, but that's kind of the next step. So assuming that all goes well in the month of March, we're hoping we can have a final property by June. Regardless of that great process, and the fact I know the site selection subcommittee is going to do a great job and end up with not the perfect site again, but the best available site for the property. They're going to end up with that, and the most accessible site for the new hospital. When we announce it, we know the reaction is going to be from the community that we're wrong, right? And the reason we know we're wrong is because every square inch of Windsor-Essex has been suggested for the new hospital. And there's going to be someone who wanted the new hospital in their backyard and didn't get it, or someone who wants the new hospital, or someone who doesn't want the hospital in their backyard and actually gets it. So we know that's going to happen. What we have to do as people who are involved and live in these buildings and recognize the infrastructure issues, and when I talk about that bed moves, part of this is when we go to the new hospital and we have 80% private rooms, we don't have to move anybody anywhere. They go right to their room and they stay in their room, and it's private and it's good to go. We don't have to worry about bed A, bed B, and we don't have to worry about these toilet issues, and you know, you go to the toilet first, so in the ward room you own the toilet, everyone else has to go on a bedpan. We don't have to do any of that anymore. because even in wards and semi-privates, is everybody's going to have their own toilet. So we don't have to worry about those things anymore. It's going to be so much better. So we live in this. So when people approach us and say, do we really need this hospital or that site? I can't believe they picked that site. Because we work in this environment, have to say, no, we have to do this. We have to push ahead. We have to make this happen. Because Dave Cook and I, who's the other co-chair of the steering committee, I've talked to over 20 groups in the community, and we share this story, and we say to them, if we don't push ahead and we get all caught up on the location, then what's going to happen is the government would love nothing better than not to spend $1.5 billion in Windsor, and they'll spend it in Toronto and they'll spend it in Ottawa, and guess what? We'll all pay for that new hospital in Toronto and new hospital in Ottawa, and they'll thank us for having our money go to them. So we deserve nothing less than Windsor Essex. So what we have to do is keep ourselves up to date on this process, is go to that website, windsorhospitals.ca or .com, go to it, get knowledgeable on it, read up on it, send friends and families and colleagues to it and say, hey, go there. If you got a question, everything's there. All the answers are there with respect to why we need this and why we need to move ahead. Because what happens is the next phase, so we're going to be submitting what's called 1B to the government in around May. And right now, 1B basically means if you're going to go to hospital and when you're going to go to hospital. So we're still at that phase of if and when. When we move to stage 2, if we get approval, this is such a big step to get to, then we're past the if part, it's just when. Because when you go to stage 2, they appoint companies like Infrastructure Ontario, and you're actually rolling up your sleeves and you're actually designing a new hospital. So that's the big move stage, and we got to get there. So the government's going to see with the site where the community lands, and if we can get through it, then they're going to say, thumbs up, you're building a new hospital. Again, it's not if anymore, it's just when, which is going to be fantastic for all of us. So again, please go to that website and just direct anybody there. We really need this to move ahead because it's not only clearly for our generation, but it's for generations to come, this new hospital. And just some of the little benefits of it are going to be fantastic for all of us in our community. It's going to be amazing. So again, I really want to thank you for coming. If you have any comments whatsoever or anything, just come and see me, talk to me. I'm always available to talk to anybody. And just before I go, and I know we've had individuals employees pass in the past, but just so happens this employee just passed away a couple days ago, Jen Levesque. She worked here for quite some time at the Olette campus, and just want to send my sympathies to clearly her family, her kids, her husband, and her whole family. She was far too young to leave us. Again, don't want to leave us on a bad note, but I know she was a big part of the team at Windsor Regional and Hotel de Grace Hospital. So, all right. So thanks everybody for coming, and thanks Matt. Thank you.